Mike, the reason that I love dentistry is 95% of what I do every day is exactly the same. My soul got sucked out of me. Okay, maybe this isn't the track for me long term. I would love to affect change in the industry. If you're not comfortable with failure, if you're not comfortable with taking risk, probably not the right fit for you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. My name is Wayne Veldsman, and you are listening to Journey to Legacy. Our guest today is none other than Michael Seitz of EarthWise Pet. If you all haven't heard of EarthWise, if you're in the US, start opening up your eyes because they've actually franchised over 200 locations, more than 1,400 employees. And Michael today tells us all about his story, as well as the story of how Earthwise grew to be so big. Have fun. Listen to this episode while you're driving, running, cooking. He tells a lot of great stories, and there's a lot of wonderful insights for entrepreneurs as well. Stay tuned till the way end. Without any further ado, Mr. Michael Seitz of Earthwise Pet. Michael, thank you for being here today. Mr. Michael Seitz, Earthwise Pet. Man, how long has Earthwise been around for now?
Oh gosh, we started franchising in '08. First prototype
Okay.
was in '05, but my family's been in it since the '70s, so a long time. So
Since the 70s.
yeah,
And
yeah.
wait, so what do you know what in the 70s made them want to, start a pet business?
Yeah, my mom was actually a professional groomer, believe it or not.
Oh, no
And
way.
what's funny is she's actually a licensed marriage and family therapist as well, but she groomed because she made more money grooming. And yeah, that's just how crazy the industry is. My father was actually an entrepreneur from the time he was 23. He's been self-employed since he was 23, but he owned a chain of
Nice.
restaurants, a restaurateur. So he owned a chain of German restaurants actually in California.
Oh,
And But restaurants are tough, man. It's like long hours,
yeah.
brutal. This is not conducive to family life at all. And
Yeah.
so, I remember growing up where my mom at one point was a waitress, my father was the bartender, my grandmother was the cook at one of the restaurants, it was that kind of a feel. And but ultimately back in 1977, um, my father approached my mom and said, "Hey, what do you think about doing something together in the pet industry?" And so they
Nice.
bought their first grooming shop in '77 and the first retail store in '78, and that was kind of where the family stuff started.
Uh,
Journey was very different though, and we can get into that as much as you want to.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. No,
mm,
I mean that's
mm,
so interesting. I love to hear stories where not just family businesses, but like entrepreneurship is sort of passed down. Because there's constantly a discussion of are people born entrepreneurs? Are they
yeah,
bred entrepreneurs? Can you learn to do it? Like, what's your opinion?
I think there's a little bit of both. I think
Mm.
there's certain personality traits that I think are conducive to entrepreneurship. That are unique. I think those can be learned if you grew up with it. You have to have a certain level of comfort with risk. There's a risk profile that's
Sure.
that's uniquely
Sure.
different from other professions potentially. And if you're a process person, that's great and all, but you kind of have to be very flexible as an entrepreneur. You have to be able to change your mind in a flash and make adjustments in a flash and be okay throwing away
Yeah.
everything that you thought you should be doing because it didn't
Yeah.
work. If you're not comfortable with failure, if you're not comfortable with taking risk, probably not the right fit for you. So
Yeah. If you're not comfortable with failure, you're not comfortable
yeah.
with risk being it right, it's such a huge one and probably not the path for you. What's your opinion on pros and cons of jumping straight into try entrepreneurship versus
Mm.
like side hustle culture?
Well, I went. So I wasn't planning on going into the industry at all. I actually was taking a very traditional track where I went to undergrad. Actually went to dental school. I went about as
Dental
safe
school.
as you could possibly imagine from a lifestyle perspective. I'm like, hey, 4 days a week, reliable paycheck, good
Yeah.
standard of living, weekends off, very little stress financially. I'm gonna go that route. I just that was the plate that was the way I went. So I went to Oregon Health Sciences in Oregon for dental school, and I remember um, I was actually while I was in dental school, I was talking to a friend of mine who was a dentist. And
Yeah.
he's one of the individuals I had shadowed in dentistry for a long time. One of the reasons I decided to go into it. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, what do you love about dentistry? Like, I'm getting to this point where I'm just about, to graduate. I'm getting ready to do this. I got a practice all lined up. Like, what is it that you love about dentistry?" He goes, "Mike, the reason that I love dentistry is 95% of what I do every day is exactly the same."
Wow.
And
Well,
my soul got sucked out of me.
yeah, that's what he loved when he's like, it's the
That's what he
same every
loved.
single
It
day.
was the same every single
What?
day. And I just about died. And I
Mm,
thought, what am I doing? Like that would I'm like
sure.
I don't care what kind of security that this would create, that will literally kill me. And so that's when
Oh.
I started to realize, okay, maybe this isn't the track for me long term. I actually started a
Mm,
business while I was in dental school. Um,
sure.
yeah, and I started going down that track while I was in dental school. So I'm going to
Oh,
classes, I'm spending all night at the labs, and I'm building an online business back in the day. This is back in about 2002, 2003. I ended up hiring a buddy of mine. He was shipping stuff out of my garage. So that was the world that I lived in. And then I realized, I thought, well, maybe I can franchise dentistry. I started going down the entrepreneurial side of dentistry. And so I started looking into that, and I realized, oh man, in most states, you have to be a licensed dentist to be on the cap table of a dental office. Like that's not going to work. So I
sure.
was like, I don't think that's going to be a possibility. And so then I thought, well, what am I doing? And so ultimately just chose a different path. So I approached my father back in '05, said, "Hey, what do you
Mm.
think about franchising pet stores?"
And so they
Um,
never franchised up until that
Never
moment.
had. They had a few family
Yeah.
stores. Never franchised them. And so
Oh,
what do you think about franchising pet stores? He's like, "Well, I'm getting older. I'm not really don't have a lot of energy, but sure. Like, well, let's give it a shot." So, we joined forces in '05, opened a prototype. In '06, a second prototype, and by then he was done. He was ready to retire. He's like, I'm getting old, and
yeah.
so that buddy of mine that worked in my garage shipping products out of my
Yeah. Yeah.
garage ended up reaching out to his dad and getting a loan to buy out my father for that
No
part of the
way.
business. And he's still a business partner of mine today. He's my chief development officer and lifelong
That's
friend since
great.
third grade. So
Wow.
yeah, you talk about a funny story. So I got a story for you, Wade. So
Oh,
so
please.
when I was a kid growing up, I'm growing up in Portland, Oregon, and I've like the entrepreneurial side of it. So you talk about, are you born with it? Like for me, I was born with it. Like I
Sure.
really believe that
Yeah.
because I actually remember a point where I was a young kid. I still have the picture today, where I wanted to take over. I actually used to sell gum out of my locker at my junior high, for example. And I would go to Food for Less. I'd buy in bulk. I'd sell by the eaches. I was making a killing in junior high to the point where I was getting in trouble by faculty and staff. Like, Mike, you got to
Yeah.
stop selling stuff. And so I'm like, well, I can do something different. So I approached a buddy of mine. I was like, we're going to take over the lemonade stand world.
Okay.
It's like
Okay.
let's professionalize lemonade stands. And so
Yeah. Nice.
and so we ended up building a lemonade stand prototype in my
Oh, oh,
backyard. When I'm in this is elementary school, so before the gum
sure.
experience. And so my buddy and I are like hammering it. We build this whole thing, pitched roof because it's Oregon. You got to have a roof so you're protected from the rain.
Okay.
Had a door on the side. We had the counters, like everything. We built this whole thing. And I have a picture of us standing next to this lemonade stand. We're like, we're gonna kill it. We're gonna make a fortune. We're gonna have tons of these across the area. And then
Of
we
course.
we finish this thing. We open up the door. We're sitting in it. We look at each other and I'm like, oh, we made one critical error. We built it in the backyard. It was 500 pounds and we couldn't move it. And we just like, all right, we give up. Like that obviously was a terrible idea, but it was just that whole process of
Yeah.
really, kind of getting through and realizing that you have a vision, you have a dream, you have
Sure.
ingenuity, you build stuff, and that's the kind of drive that I think. I find most entrepreneurs are tinkerers. They like to
Yeah.
just
Definitely.
tinker at things all the time. They like to test
Yeah.
stuff out. They're always doing something. They're always working on some new thing. They're always, they're never satisfied with just, they're always doing something. And so,
Yeah. Can't really be
it's
sitting still too much.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
what a
So
fun story, man. From Literally, like we're gonna make the best lemonade stand in the world, right? You built your own storefront, but your
Yes.
location, man, your
We
location
didn't
was
think about
bad.
location. That was the problem. That was the problem.
Your
We missed a
location
vital
was bad.
component to brick and mortar. It was location, and we completely screwed it up.
Not
Especially
not
since
not
we
to
lived on a cul-de-sac, and it was
yeah.
the backyard of a house on a cul-de-sac, so there was no chance of any customers.
Yeah,
So,
there's gonna be pretty low foot traffic, that's for sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We couldn't even have a sign on the road saying, "Hey, back here." So,
I like it.
yeah,
Um, nice. Wow, so you're actually kind of born entrepreneur, but I believe it is
yeah.
something that can be taught. But so did you ever actually become a dentist? Or is like while you were in school, like you said, you're still
Yeah.
studying and then you kind of, my question around side hustle is that sort of the route that you were going, right? You were a full-time student.
Yep.
You sort of started side hustling, right?
Yeah, it was a side hustle while I was a full-time student. Everybody thought I was nuts for trying to like do this double timing kind of thing, and the whole online thing was kind of funny because it got I learned some interesting things about online businesses. And it's like, hey, choose things that are high value, high ticket items that are small, easy to ship. There were certain things that I was learning when I was going through this process, and I kind of figured out a
Yeah,
formula that
yeah.
worked. And I started getting my family involved. Like my mom started making like gift baskets out of her house down in California, all these kind of things, right? This
No
is
way.
super funny. But it became this whole kind of organism that continued to grow. And then eventually I'm like, you know what? I don't even know why I'm doing this dentistry thing
Yeah, yeah.
anymore.
It was,
So
it was like just
yeah, so I
money,
didn't,
money at
I
that
never,
point, and you're like,
yeah.
yeah,
So at that point, I never practiced dentistry. But I still have a lot of friends, obviously, that are dentists, and
mm,
very close to the profession that way. So my dentist,
nice.
he'd always hate when I'd come in because I'd be like, "Hey, can I see the radiographs?" Like, he's like, even when my wife would go, he's like, "Hey, don't tell her to do anything. Like Mike will tell you it's not necessary." Like, so it's like the worst patient ever. But
Yeah, that sounds like
yeah,
it.
yeah. So, anyways, yeah. No, so I never actually practiced dentistry. I went straight into business instead. Um,
Nice,
but
nice.
it was a good transition. It was right for me, and
Yeah,
I had no experience in franchising though. So I agree with you that you can learn
yeah.
entrepreneurship because for me it was I had to learn franchising.
Sure.
And to
Where
me,
where did that where did franchising, sorry to cut you off, where did that idea first come from? Because you said before you approached your dad for franchising, you were like, what if we franchise dentists, right? Like,
yes.
where did
Yeah,
that idea even come from?
I was already thinking of the franchise model from an early point. I understood some kind of just limitations that I had. I was young. I was resource poor. I was like, what can
Sure.
I
Yeah.
do to scale in a way where it's not all on me?
Mm,
And
nice.
so that's why I got interested in franchising at first.
That's
Um,
cool.
I always say I was young and ignorant enough to do it. And the nice thing is when you're that age, you can take all the risk, and if you completely fail, you can start over.
Simple.
It's not like now. If I was doing that now, it'd be a lot harder to start over. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And so do you recall, I mean, so that's a great mindset there, of course, right? At that age, you can take the risk. It's not a big deal to start over. And then franchising as well seems really appealing because, as you just said, it's not all on you.
Right. It's not all on you. There's shared resources. Other people bringing capital to the table. It's a high margin business. Um,
Mm,
the downside with franchising is you are giving up a significant amount of control of a lot of
sure.
things in the way that business
Yeah.
is operated. So, you have to be comfortable with people doing their own thing and running their own businesses because you are helping them. They are their businesses still, right? And so
Yeah.
that learning curve was pretty steep and pretty tough. But the first store that we
Mm,
franchised. So after my buddy bought in, we brought in a silent investor as well to help us franchise, and we sold one of our first three prototype locations to a customer as our first franchisee.
no way. But so you're saying that one of your first franchisees was actually a customer at the pet store.
Correct. Yeah. Our first franchisee was a customer at the store. They had been asking if we were going to franchise well before we did. And
Wow.
so, we had kind of the situation where like, well, worst case scenario, we got one,
Oh,
kind of a thing. And so, franchising, it's not cheap to franchise. It costs a lot of money to go through the process of becoming a franchisor. And there's a lot
Sure.
of regulation that um, that they don't really tell you about until you're in it. And then,
Yeah.
most franchise attorneys are like they're so set on, yeah, you just need your franchise disclosure document, and they'll do all the work for you. And then you do it, and you realize, wait, I have to pay you every single year to update this thing. Wait, I have to get an
Wow.
annual audit every single year, mandatory audit every year, and all these costs that you had no idea existed. So, a lot of people don't
Yeah.
realize is in franchising until you have about 50 units, up until about
Wow.
the 50 unit point, you survive off of franchise sales.
Yeah.
You are not cash flowing without franchise sales. So if you stop
What
selling
do you mean?
stores,
Sorry. Yeah. If
so
you
if you
stop
if you don't
selling new
sell if you don't sell
stores.
if you don't sign somebody as a new franchisee and get those
Yeah.
franchise fees in, you will. So you could have 10 really successful franchisees. You will fail unless you continue to sell, and then you hit a certain
Wow.
point that we call royalty self-sufficient in
Royalty
the franchising,
self-sufficient.
which is where your royalties that you're gaining on a weekly basis from the franchisees cover all your fixed costs as a franchisor. And that
Nice.
doesn't usually happen until you have about 50 locations. And
Wow.
so, yeah, so why do most franchisors fail? It's that they don't realize that your
Interesting.
costs, your fixed costs, your annual registration costs, all these costs that are required for becoming a franchisor, you're not going to cover them until you have about 50 units. So,
Wow, I would have never guessed. It's crazy to me that, you can think about the individual stores
mhm.
being really profitable, right, for the
Yeah,
franchisee and like it's doing wonderful, but as far as an overarching franchise and as a
yeah.
franchisor, maybe not that big. Michael, before we keep diving any deeper, tell everybody just a little bit about EarthWise Pet, like what you guys do. I
Yeah,
feel like a
what
lot of
are
people
we?
have seen them around, and so,
Yeah.
but
No, so yeah, EarthWise Pet. So we have three kind of flagship concepts under our umbrella. We have EarthWise Pet, which is a pet nutrition center and wellness spa. So what that means basically is a very curated selection of nutritious foods and products, grooming, and then self-wash. That's the wellness spa component. And then we have
nice.
something called Groom Bar, which is a grooming salon, but it's a luxury spa salon. So we have our own private label shampoos. We even have our own wines. That's like the kind of the kind of like quality level that we're talking about with Groom Bar. And
Wow.
every Earthwise Pets, when the new ones that are built, all have the wellness spa is a Groom Bar inside of it. So you have a Groom Bar inside the Earthwise Pet. And then we now have a mobile grooming concept as well that we've just launched. We just sold out Chicago. And so we're hoping to have 50 to 100 of them on the road by the end of the year. So
Wow, congrats. The mobile grooming just launched in
yeah.
Chicago. When you say just launched, how long ago?
So they had their first van hit the road February 3rd. Yeah,
Wow, and we're
in
at the end of
Chicago.
April now.
Yeah, so they have yeah, so we have now 10 vans I think that are currently on the road right now. So
Nice, exciting times. You guys are continuing to innovate,
yeah. Yeah, no, but for
as you
sure.
should.
We always yeah, as a franchisor, I always tell franchisees, hey, look, let us make sure you're in business 5 years from now. You focus on the day to day. And so we're always
Bingo.
investing in looking at the trends and seeing what's happening.
Yeah.
There's a lot right now that's a full-time job in and of itself, looking at the trends, not just in our industry, but in business in general. For everything from tariffs to AI to all the different existential factors that are hitting right now. So
Yeah, it's absolutely
mm,
endless. Would you say that's one of like the biggest factors, not factors, I'm thinking one of the biggest reasons to become a franchisee is
oh,
that you can
100%.
focus on the day to day and somebody else will focus on the 5 year, the 10 year, the big vision.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think a good example when COVID happened, we had we had spent years developing a buy online, pick up in store or ship to home kind of a platform that we had available to
Nice.
franchisees. And so a lot of our franchisees were just, they're making a lot of money, they're content, they're like, oh, we're never going to use this thing. And I'm like, no, we're still going to build it
Uh,
because eventually at some point, you're going to ask us for it because we saw the trends, we knew what was happening. And then
nice.
sure enough, COVID hits, we have a webinar and 48 of our franchisees are like, we need that. And so we onboarded 48 franchisees onto this platform that weren't already on it in 24 hours so they could have any sales whatsoever. And so, yeah, so I think from a franchisee perspective, it's like, a franchisee doesn't have the resources to be able to develop that. We have in-house
Sure.
developers. We have, um, we negotiate vendor contracts. We look at best practices. We built our
Awesome.
own certified pet dietitian training program with 1,400 across the country. Um,
Wow.
and these kind of things, it's just they're resource heavy. And so,
Yeah.
an individual franchisee would never be able to do it on their own. And so that's a big part of it. So
Yeah, man, honestly, what a huge, huge, huge benefit that is, right, for a
yeah,
franchisee. From a franchisor's perspective, I'm curious, like, and you can take us back some when you guys just started growing, right? And you said you sold the first one off to a customer, right? And you gave us this stat of like, it's around 50 when you're actually starting to make profit off of like,
yeah.
the income coming in from them. But I'm curious to hear more about how do you maintain your brand throughout? Because I think most people have seen the movie The Founder now, right, with
Yeah,
McDonald's, and that was
yeah.
just such a huge problem. And so for you all, like, how do you grow effectively like that while actually selling people their own businesses, run this your own way? How do you maintain control?
I think that's especially difficult in our industry because there's such a regionality to it.
Mm,
So,
regionality too.
especially on the product side, the
Okay.
consumers have very different preferences for pet food, for example, depending on what region
Okay.
of the country you're in. And so,
Sure.
if you're in Wisconsin, you would think that the best food that sold there is a company called From. That's what everybody would tell you. It's going to be From. It's they're made in Wisconsin. It's all about Wisconsin cheese. It's all fresh foods, everything.
Uh,
Like, it's a great product. But if you talk to that same person somewhere, up in the Northwest, they'll be like, From, like, I don't know if I've ever even heard
yeah.
of that before, right? And
Yeah.
so, how do you keep that brand consistency throughout? So what we focused on
Yeah.
is the services component as the consistent messaging. So it's the
Okay.
it's the nutrition knowledge that's consistent. It's the
Uh,
expertise. It's the, you come to our stores because the people know what they're talking about, and you come to our stores
nice.
because the services that we offer, that they're going to treat and take care of your pets better than you would. And so
Mm,
that's the focus in terms of consistency. So it's the service component. So what we look at is what does our service training look like? What does our nutrition training look like?
mm,
And the products we're not as hyper focused on from a brand consistency perspective. So you have core products, but there's a lot of flexibility in that product mix depending on what store you are and where you are in the country.
nice, nice, interesting. So focus on the actual, it's kind of like these systems of
Mhm.
presenting the product, right? How
Correct.
well you're training the employees, that
Yep.
piece.
Yep.
Are you just like preaching a certain mission and vision of the company?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, for sure. I think our mission has always been to better the lives of pets. We consider pets are family is kind of our tagline, right? So it's one of those things where we've always considered this us as forerunners in bringing to the public this concept of, no, these are family. This is family. They deserve as much care and compassion as we give each other. And so we've been promoting this kind of pets are family concept, and we've also been really forerunners in terms of this, feed healthy foods to your pets. And so we have a
Mm,
whole marketing program called Let Us Help You Buy Better. It's not about, buy
nice.
from us. It's we're going to teach
Yeah.
you and educate you on the principles and the categories that will improve your pet's health, but the decision is ultimately yours on where you buy. And so it's the mission is to promote the nutrition education as well as this idea that pets are part of our family.
Nutrition education, teach them how to buy better, even if it's just
Yeah,
not just from you. I'm like, yeah, pets are family. Treat them as
yeah,
such.
yeah, yeah,
Man, I like it. Pretty simple concepts actually, but like I guess you have to be able to boil them down that simply, especially so they can get out not just to your customer base,
yeah.
but to all the franchisees, right? So they can understand and promote it the same way.
Absolutely. And then a franchisee, once they understand that those are kind of your two pillars, is that pets are family and that you want to help people buy better, then everything that they do, the products that they carry, everything that they're focused on can help drive towards promoting those two pillars.
Mm. How focused are you on relationships with franchisees and just like sort of
Hmm.
sustainable growth?
Yeah, so we have two different kinds of franchise. We have what we call our hobby store owners. These are owner operators that just love the industry. They love talking to customers, and they're wonderful representations to the public of our brand because
Believe
they
it.
just are just awesome people, but they really don't have
Nice.
any interest in expansion. They're not really business-minded people, so they're not
Hmm.
necessarily multi-unit guys, right? And then we have what we call kind of our investor buyer archetype, which help us develop markets. And so we love both of them, and so we have a combination of kind of the two. So we have those that are like the brand building franchisees, and then we have those that are the growth building franchisees. And so how do we keep that kind of relationship component to it? I think a lot of it has to do with transparency. A lot of it has to do with um, access, access to
Mm.
leadership, making sure franchisees know that they have access and that they're not isolated. And so we use some pretty extensive internal communication platforms to make sure that there's open communication all the time between franchisees. They talk to each other as well as to us.
Great.
And that seems to be working pretty well.
Nice. Yeah, that piece of having franchisees talking to each other.
Yeah, a
Like
lot of
that sounds
systems
like a game
don't want
changer.
that to happen because they think groupthing's going to happen and they're going to start be negative, and that absolutely does happen. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
Somebody gets on some tangent and makes some assumption that everybody believes it's true. It has nothing to do with anything. Um, but we've always thought, even if something really negative is posted on our internal platform,
Sure.
um, we don't delete it. Like we let it sit
Uh,
there. We don't. There's no censorship on that. Like we just let it be there. We
nice.
address it if it's needed to be addressed. Most of the time, it's just somebody venting,
Sure.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
just let them vent. Business is tough. So.
Yeah. Business is tough, right? People need to bend. Do you find that you guys often have to intervene, or are the franchisees, actively talking to each other and like helping each other?
So, the way we do it, we have category-based communication platforms. We also have an owners communication section. So the owners
Mm.
can talk to each other directly, so they can talk outside of the earshot of staff, for example. And so
Nice.
they're able to collaborate and talk about, hey, what do you do in this situation? What do you do in this situation? And so it kind of takes us out of it a little bit, which helps
Yeah.
with the infrastructure side. Um, but every single one of our stores also has a direct channel with our full team. And so they can
Nice.
communicate and ask any of the team members anything at any time. And so
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's one of those where I think there's just uh, um, I don't think there's any ideal way to do it, but
Mm.
I'm just a
Mm.
big believer in open communication. I think when things go
Yeah.
underground and you just don't like they're not talked about, that's when the real scary stuff happens. So
Yeah, that's definitely when real problems happen. I'm right there with you with believing that I would rather have people over communicate than under communicate, and it's great to have access to leadership and support. So
yep.
outside of just franchising and Earthwise, what role do you think mentorship plays in
Mm.
entrepreneurship success?
I think it's huge. I think it's huge. I used to have a CEO coach, a good friend of mine that I used to talk to every single week, probably 4 years straight. Every week we would chat, and it was during kind of a high growth stage, and he had kind of done it before, and so he kind of mentored me and coached me through that process. I think it's hugely important because especially entrepreneurship can be kind of isolating and lonely at times.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, uh, it's sometimes it's hard to relate and
mm,
so, having somebody that gets it, that can kind of walk you through what they walked through, I think is really important to entrepreneurship in general. And obviously,
yeah,
as somebody grows and develops, and as their business grows and develops, those coaches can change or whatever. But I love the mentorship model.
exactly. Yeah, nice. I like that piece that you specifically mentioned there that like your coaches and mentors can change and like they should change, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, they should. Yeah.
Yeah, keep evolving. Michael, I love it. You guys are doing some really amazing stuff over there. I really like your mindset. You guys are growing quickly. Um, with the show being Journey to Legacy, I'm curious, like with your personal self and with the business also, like what's the legacy that you're working to leave in the world?
Yeah, so for me, like, I've always been a cause-based business guy. So
Great.
I really do believe in affecting change through business.
Mm,
It's one of the reasons we call it EarthWise Pet, right? Um, I remember back in the day, we also have the trademark for Nature's Pet, but we actually shifted names from Nature's Pet over to EarthWise Pet back in 2011, and the reason we did that was because I figured at some point natural would just be a normal everyday expectation. And I was
definitely.
like, and it wouldn't really be, kind of a change maker. And so, I actually went and got my master's in public administration specifically to understand cause-based realities, nonprofits and
Mm,
government work. But for me, I think for my legacy, I would love to affect change in the industry. The industry is still very much behind the curve when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to
mm,
um, ethical
mm.
sourcing and products, those kind of things. AFCO and some of the
Well,
governmental bodies are really useless to some extent. Like they're really not
yeah.
help. Like there's not a lot of value on that.
Mm,
And so for me, I would like to see some pretty significant increases in transparency of sourcing and products within the industry. And so if I can affect change, it's in that area of educating the consumer on these things. I just got asked to be a board member on a nonprofit that's international nonprofit that's specifically related to this. So I'm really excited for that because I think that'll continue that legacy. But for me, if people can think of EarthWise Pet and think sustainable, eco-friendly, um, and we're doing our part in the pet industry, then that's enough for me.
and that's great, honestly, right? I love how you guys changed the name, that you understood, like you had the foresight that like natural products is just getting more and more popularity, right? It's the term that everybody wants
Yeah,
to hear.
to me, natural. It was just it should be expected.
Yeah.
It's why are we gonna have that term? It's what I'm saying. It's like the fact that we have that term is a little disturbing. It's like, hey, let's buy some natural pet food as opposed to what? It's like so yeah. So it was a good
Well
change at that
said.
time. Yeah.
Nice, great change, Michael. I
All right.
appreciate you coming on today, man. Honestly, it's a pleasure to learn more about you, learn more about Earthwise. For everybody out there, if they want to like follow along with your journey personally, Earthwise as well, was the best place for them to go.
Yeah, I think if you want to learn more about EarthWise, earthwisepet.com is the main site. There's a fun AI dietitian on that site that you can go on and ask questions about your pet. And then earthwisepetfranchise.com if you're interested in franchising. For me personally,
Okay.
I love for people to ping me on LinkedIn or whatever else. So it's
Nice.
just yeah, just look up Michael Seitz, EarthWise Pet, and you'll find me. So, yeah,
Michael, thank you so much. Honestly, I'm gonna chop it right there at the end.
yeah,
Great. Honestly, pleasure talking to you. Lots of wonderful insight, and you got a fun story.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks, Wayne.
And that's a wrap, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Michael. Like, how cool is that, right? Like, starting entrepreneurship so young, although he believes that you can learn these skills. But one big piece of the puzzle, one nugget he dropped is just you need to check your tolerance of risk and failure. But I'm not sure if Michael said it, but a lot of past guests do, is that just remember that the worst thing that can happen is that you try, you fail, and then you go back to what you're currently doing. Everybody, we have almost nothing to lose, but we only have one life to live. Make the most out of it while we can. Thank you all for being here today. If you're looking for help to leave a meaningful legacy on this world, and specifically how we communicate and interact with the other human beings around us, that's what's going to allow us to leave a bigger legacy. Come visit us over at journeytolegacy.org. Till next time, thank you for being here. I'm your host, Wayne Veldsman, and we will see you soon.